Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss horror and in this case movies, because I have for you today my spoiler-free review of the horror movie The Piper.
It's coffee time!
So apparently in 2023 there were not just one but two movies that were released that were about the Piper, and one of them has just made it into the cinema here in the Netherlands and I went to check it out. Now I believe this came out officially at the end of 2023 but is hitting a lot of theaters depending on your country now at the beginning of 2024, and I try to watch every horror movie that I can find in the cinema here, and I went to watch it with an open mind. I hadn't heard anybody talking about it at all, and actually it was a very decent movie, so I thought I would make a video to bring some awareness to the movie because I have not heard many people talking about it. And as always, I'm gonna review the movie for you guys spoiler free. Now, The Piper is inspired on a very old fairy tale, almost a cautionary tale. I believe it started in the Middle Ages, and it follows this piper that comes to town and kind of like saves a town from a rat epidemic that they have. So the piper comes and gets rid of all the rats in Hamelin, and the people in town decide not to pay him. And so he seeks revenge and comes back to the town and takes away all of their children. So I do remember reading this when I was a kid, and probably I read the Brothers Grimm adaptation. It has been adapted a couple of different times, but I believe one of the most popular editions is the tale included in the Brothers Grimm compilations. So the phrase Pied Piper is now related to people that basically attracts others through charisma or through false promises. It's directed by Erlingur Thoroddsen, who already did Child Eater and Drift, and it features Julian Sands in one of his latest roles before his passing. When a young composer is tasked with finishing her late mentor's concerto, she soon discovers that the melody has disturbing origins and awakens an evil force. The movie opens with the character Gustafsson, and he's calling Catherine, asking her for the concerto pages because he wants to perform that concert for children, but she refuses, saying that there's something evil with it and she wants actually to destroy it. As we can see from the trailer, she tries to destroy it, but even though she tries to burn it, the pages stop burning and she has an accident. So that is basically the very beginning of the film, the first scene, and something you can already see in the trailer. And since then, people have been trying to find those pages. Mel is a mother and a struggling musician, and she is part of the orchestra directed by Gustafsson. And so she's really desperate for a chance to be more, to go to the next level in the orchestra, and she promises Gustafsson that she's going to get those pages of that first concerto from Catherine, and then they can play it for the children. Gustafsson's character is played so well by the late Julian Sands. It is one of those characters that is like the villain in a story in a way, and he is very hard to love. He is vile and abusive and selfish, and the actor did such a good job. Like, you feel it the moment you see him on screen, you know that he's not a good guy. It was the juxtaposition between him as the villain and Mel, who is such a loving, like, nice, innocent woman, and she's just trying to be a good mother for her daughter Zoe, who has a hearing impairment. And it's like, like the yin and yang when it comes to characters, and I think they actually worked really well. I thought moving the idea of this piper to an orchestra and a cursed three-movement orchestral piece aimed at children was really clever and elevated what could have been more of a silly B-movie. The music was great and truly helped with the atmosphere. The tempo, the pacing was really good of the movie. I thought it almost felt like an orchestra, you know, like a concerto, where you start and it's kind of like low and everything is being settled, and then it speeds up a little bit, and then it ends in almost like a storm of instruments and things going on. Like, I like that the pacing almost resembles as well that three installment, that three movement piece. I think they did a good job when it comes to give the story that has been told 1,000 times before kind of like a fresh new face. I really enjoyed to learn about the background of this concerto and about what kind of evil is attached to those pages and why it affects children. I mean, we all expect it because we know the story of the Pied Piper. So I was really invested in all of that. The thing is, at the end, I thought the movie was more an exercise on style rather than substance. So even though there was a lot there, I think they were more focused on the cinematography and other things that were really important, don't get me wrong. And I think a lot of things worked really well for the movie. But in the third act, I did feel like the movie lost a little bit of its strength. So you have like a really good cinematography and a really good composer, but I feel like when it comes to the storyline, to the script, it could have been better. The Piper's first act, I felt, was when it was the creepiest, because you still have not seen much of the Piper. There is like a thunderstorm coming in the middle of the night, and we see Mel desperate trying to get those pages of that concerto, and it is really atmospheric. I love the way they utilize the lighting in some of those scenes with some red light, and I thought it was quite effective. And at some point, I think towards the end, the third act is when it was less effective, but for the majority of the movie, I have to give it props for being really creepy and atmospheric. There were some cliche horror moments. It is not a movie that is heavily relying on like those cheap jump scares, which is something that I appreciated, but there are some cliches, like, you know, you see these somebody, like a kid, throwing a ball into a dark room, and the ball just comes back as if something or someone has pushed it back. It's something that we have seen done so many times before in horror, but it does not, you know, stop you from enjoying the movie, even though there are some horror elements that have been used a lot in the past. But the movie, like I said, did manage to be really creepy, and it did go there when it comes to the blood and the gore. I didn't expect it, that it was going to get really intense when it comes to that. The film does really catch up with the horror in the final act and really takes it to the next level when it comes to the blood and the gore. And we do get a wonderfully shot, bloody scene with the Piper, and it is very reminiscent of several gems from the 80s. I cannot tell you exactly what happens because that would be a spoiler, but I felt like they did a great job with practical effects, and even the CGI in this movie didn't bother me so much because I feel like it kind of fits the character that the Piper is, but there is also some CGI in it. And even though I truly love that final wonderful bloody moment that we got, something happened at the very end of the movie that it's something that some horror movies do that is really annoying, and that is like a second ending kind of thing, and I'm not a fan of that. So at the end of the day, I gave this movie a 2.5 out of 5, which means I would still recommend you guys to watch this movie. It is not perfect, but I thought they did such a good job at creating a unique take on the Piper. Most of the movies that are based in this type of fairy tales tend to take the original story way too literal. And by bringing the Piper to a more modern society with an orchestra and like a cursed concerto, I thought was really good. And I really, you know, for the majority of the movie, you feel like it's a unique and a fresh horror movie, and it's only when you get to the third act and the Piper comes and then you remember, oh yeah, this is the fairy tale, so the Piper is mad and now he wants to take the children, like this is where we're gonna get at, because it is an interpretation of that fairy tale at its core. I do think it had a lot more potential than what we got, but it had a good atmosphere, it has good acting, it has a lot of creepy good moments, and you know, like I said, there are some bloody moments that I really enjoyed. It's one of those movies where you probably don't have to particularly think about too much, so you just sit down, you relax, and you just watch a cozy horror movie. So if you have not watched it yet, I do recommend you to give it a chance. And this was, you guys, my spoiler-free review of the movie The Piper. Let me know down below if you knew about this movie, if you're interested in watching it, and what do you think about, you know, fairy tales turned into horror movies? Which is your favorite one that they have adapted? Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye!